Hey everybody, how's it going? Marcos Villegas for Fight Up TV, being joined with the one and only Jim Lampley, as we're going to be touching on a various amount of boxing topics happening in the boxing world. Jim, as always, so good to talk to you, so good to see you. Things are going well, right?
Everything's all right. Sitting quietly in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, waiting for all of these boxing events that you are referencing to take place.
Yeah, the calendar's starting to fill up. There's a lot of fights and events that have been announced. A lot of things that are trending in the moment in the boxing zeitgeist. First things first, there's a heavyweight fight that's happening next weekend in a few days in Saudi Arabia that's going to see the former heavyweight champion of the world, Anthony Joshua, take on a UFC heavyweight champion, but a man that has only one pro boxing fight, who did phenomenal against the lineal heavyweight champion, that man being Francis Ngannou. Jim, what do you make of the fight? And do you think we see something like we saw against Tyson Fury over there in Saudi Arabia in the next
We
few
don't
days?
know because we don't know yet whether what happened between Ngannou and Fury was best described as very good Ngannou or very bad Fury, or a combination of the two. We're going to find out something more about that now that Joshua enters as a proxy to be the person who can give us some content relative to that. And of course, Joshua and Fury are two different kinds of people and two different kinds of fighters. So there's no guarantee that Ngannou can accomplish against Anthony Joshua what he accomplished against Fury. For one thing, Joshua seems to have his eye on the ball a little bit more going into the fight than was the case for Fury, because of course Fury provided Joshua with, if it was necessary, a meaningful wake-up call. And Joshua now knows that Ngannou is not somebody who can't be effective in a prize fight ring under boxing rules using boxing gear. We've seen that happen. So Joshua has a chance to prepare based on that, instead of Fury, who was coming off of months doing reality television with a vanity reality TV project. And my take is that once you've entered into a vanity reality TV project, you have left reality behind for good, or until it gets knocked back into you. And maybe Ngannou knocks some reality back into Fury. We'll find that out a little bit further down the road.
This thing is so not strange to me, but maybe like perplexing, because common sense says, as a boxing fan, Anthony Joshua, former heavyweight champion, been boxing his whole entire life, looked phenomenal against Otto Wallin, looked like the old AJ. After that performance, a lot of fans are like, that's the AJ we remember. What happened to that AJ? Bring that AJ back. We think that AJ's back. Going into this Ngannou fight, and it's like, how is it that a guy like Ngannou is able to compete? I know it's the heavyweight division, and if you're a big puncher, that's the one division where it's like cliche, like anything can happen regardless of skill level, even though, there's smaller percentages of those things happening. But yeah, I don't know, are MMA fighters just getting better, or it's because it's the heavyweights and anything can happen, or what's going on here, Jim? How are these MMA guys able to compete?
Well, obviously, Ngannou is an athlete. He showed that. He comes from life circumstances which are extremely motivating at their base. I mean, if you can't be motivated by having somehow made it out of the sand mines and into a global spotlight of the kind that he operated in against Fury, then you aren't capable of being motivated. He rose to the skies for that particular moment in time, and now again, we're going to take a step forward toward finding out whether that was real Ngannou or whether that was a creation of Fury's inattention, distraction, etc. When you get to the numbers of dollars that we're talking about with regard to these events and the way that they can influence a life that was once something much more normal and less affected by cosmic dimensions that are hard for the human mind to understand, then you don't know what's going to happen to you. I'm the person who was stupid enough a few months ago to be touting the idea that Fury could build an almost incomparable resume in the history of the division. Look how wrong you can be. And I was just as wrong about that as he was to do a reality vanity television project. So now Joshua is going to be the template through which we find out whether Ngannou was real against Fury or whether Fury was just real bad that day.
Yeah.
And Joshua, let's face it, Joshua's again, he's a different kind of specimen than Fury. He's not as outlandishly big as Fury. He's more of a conventional boxer type. He has to be focused, ready, and on his game to give himself the best chance of dealing with Ngannou, which Fury did not do as well as he expected to.
A focused Joshua, like the one we saw against Valine, how long do you expect Ngannou to be in there with him?
A focused Joshua is a potentially great heavyweight. A focused Joshua is a proven commodity with various exploits on his resume that suggest to you he can still be great. He was very gifted. He's gifted with size. He's gifted with instincts. He's gifted with physical vitality and athletic ability. He still has all that. He could be great against Ngannou, or he could fail to show up. Anything is possible, which makes it interesting. That's the best possible situation for a pay-per-view. What am I going to get? Something sublime or something disastrous? It could be either on either side of the ledger.
Ah, man. Is that good for boxing? If a guy like Ngannou is able to give Joshua trouble, or is Ngannou just an anomaly? It's just something else that's an arbitration.
Well, we have this piece of evidence where Ngannou has been measured hitting a board or hitting a template of some sort with supposedly the highest impact ever measured. The underlying suggestion being, oh, maybe he's the most powerful puncher of all time. There's no way any of us are really going to figure out whether something like that is true. But we can figure out that he probably hits pretty hard. And if he gets into position to land the right kind of punch on Joshua, that could be big trouble for Joshua. Or the other possibility, of course, is that he works so hard to get in position to land the one big punch that he doesn't do the rest of the work, the boxing, the ring generalship, all of those kinds of things that it takes to actually win a fight. There are three possibilities here. Somebody's going to win a decision, or one guy's going to knock the other out, or vice versa. I guess that makes four possibilities, really. But a lot of things can happen in prize fights, and this one is as unpredictable as any.
Yeah. I just wonder about the not ongoing, but this has always been a thing with Joshua. Fans, critics, observers of the sport have always mentioned his ability to take punishment and his chin and being placed against a guy like an Ngannou who's such a big puncher. I just kind of wonder if you chin checks him, is he going to get up? What's going to happen there,
Like, Joshua has to win the fight. If he wants to continue his career, he can't be the guy who lost to Francis Ngannou, an MMA performer who almost got there against Fury and didn't quite get there. So Joshua has to win the fight. And with that as his current reality, he's got to enter the ring, deal with what he sees in front of him, and observe the old Larry Merchant dictum, which was borrowed from somebody else, I forget from whom, but the dictum was, win this one, look good in the next one. It doesn't matter how he wins it, he has to win it, and then go forward and be more observant maybe of how good he can look in the next time out against preferably a fighter with a more conventional boxing resume than Francis Ngannou. He wouldn't be fighting Francis Ngannou if Ngannou hadn't accomplished what he accomplished against Fury.
Well, Fury didn't
expect Ngannou to accomplish that. So we're dealing entirely with the life of the unexpected here.
Well, yeah, this was supposed to be Joshua Wilder.
Right.
Wilder was supposed to beat Joseph Parker, who's also on this card against Ziling Zhang, Big Bang Zhang, who's a quality
Right. And
heavyweight.
Zile Zhang is on this undercard, right?
Yeah.
So anything's possible with him too. You know, that up to now, there hasn't been such a thing as a Chinese heavyweight. But if somebody emerges from the largest national population in the world and is good, you have to observe that. Got to pay attention. And he's monstrously big.
Speaking of Wilder, did you see the Parker fight? What are your thoughts? You know, a lot of people are wondering,
Well,
is this the same Wilder?
Deontay Wilder's been through a lot of wars. Deontay Wilder has made money, and I don't know whether he's kept it or squandered it. So I couldn't give you a bird's eye view of the motivation picture for Deontay Wilder, but he did not appear to be supremely motivated in that fight.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people mention the inactivity and how the inactivity has plagued a lot of fighters in boxing. I would imagine that played a big part.
Every fight. If they are inactive, it doesn't help them. It hurts them. So it plagues every fighter who falls prey to the sporadic schedule that goes with the current distribution pattern in boxing. You know, you don't have these reliable day after day, month after month type distributors. You have these one of a kind events that keep coming up for essentially pay-per-view type distribution. That means that fighters aren't always certain in their emotional structure, how and where and against whom. They wind up with what amount to surprise engagements. That leads to surprise performances sometimes.
From what you gathered, I know we're not in the mind of Wilder, but as an observer, Jim, do you feel he still has what it takes to become a heavyweight champion?
In the current environment, he wouldn't be my bet. Okay, I mean, if you're asking me, okay, look out at the 5 or 6 guys who might be considered for the persona, including Zhang. Wilder is not the person on whom I would pin the tail. That would still, to me, be Fury, maybe Joshua, somebody other than Wilder from this current mix.
If Joshua were to lose to Ngannou, how big of an upset would that be in the pantheon of upsets in the sport?
It would be a huge upset by any conventional standard, but we're not living in a conventional period. You know, if Joshua had gotten 1 or 2 more points in the scoring against Fury and had been the winner of that fight, that would have been massively unpredictable, an absolutely gargantuan upset, and it almost happened. So, you know, we're always only a point or two or a round or two away from that kind of thing happening if these things are going to go the distance. And Ngannou against Fury looked like he's got a pretty good chin. So, you know, maybe we'll find out more against him next week against Joshua. Or maybe Joshua knocks him into next week and looks like the younger Anthony Joshua. And we go back to the drawing board to recalibrate what we think about that particular personnel interaction in the heavyweight division.
Yeah, you know, like I mentioned earlier, like the heavyweight division is the one division where like that cliche, like anything can happen, like applies because of the size of the guys. You know, at the lighter weight classes, they're just
because
so
the power of the punches they throw.
Yep.
Yeah, because the human chin is not made to take that kind of shot. That's why.
Yeah, very true. So it's like when we say that, like it can happen
at any moment. That's what makes it so enticing. Even non-boxing fans are interested in the heavyweight division because of the factor that you just described.
Yeah, we love the big guys punching each other. That is going to see you on the live chat again on ppv.com, right?
Yeah, I'll be live chat ppv.com, this time with Kevin Ioli, and chance for viewers to watch, absorb the pay-per-view, listen to the call of the fight. And if they have more thoughts and comments, they interact with our live chat during the fight. They can even squawk back at us and tell us how wrong we can be.
ppv.com is going to be carrying a few pay-per-views coming up, and we'll touch on those a little further along on the calendar, Jim. But I do want to touch on 2 other topics. One, by chance, have you been keeping abreast of the Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia fight that was announced and the press conferences that happened?
Devin Haney's an extraordinary athlete. Devin Haney appears to be potentially, we don't know until they get into the ring, but he appears to be a more well-rounded fighter and a more likely bet as to overall boxing quality than Ryan Garcia. So based on conventional wisdom, I have to make Devin Haney the favorite in the fight. He beat Vasily Lomachenko. I'm not sure that I would pick Garcia to do something like that. Ryan Garcia has a sizzling left hook, and sizzling left hooks have solved a lot of problems that are ancillary to them in fights in the past. So you can never count him out. He could always knock Haney out with one sizzling left hook. But at the end of the day, you have to prefer Haney's overall boxing skill and resume to that of Ryan Garcia.
Yeah, they just had a press tour. They went to New York. Yesterday they were in Los Angeles. And the big theme that came out of it, or the one thing that a lot of people are picking up on it, is they feel that Ryan Garcia just isn't there mentally. He's not focused. And at the press conference, he admitted to drinking and smoking in between camps. What do you make of that, Jim? Like, you've covered this game for such a long time. When that gets involved with a fighter, what happens there?
You know, not as a fighter, not as an athlete, only as a broadcaster. From personal experience, I can tell you that when I first started making way more money than I had ever dreamed I was likely to make in my life, I made exactly those mistakes. I drank too much. I smoked pot. I dated women I probably shouldn't have chosen to date. I spent too many nights in places where I shouldn't have been. So I can empathize. If Ryan Garcia is being confessional enough in media appearances to say, okay, this is where my behavior has gone wrong, I get it. Okay. I don't know of too many people who have wound up at some surprise plateau in their late 20s, middle 20s, somewhere along that stage in life, making a great deal more money than they ever dreamed possible, who didn't make any mistakes. It's almost impossible. It throws you for a loop. I admire his honesty in saying so. I think Oscar De La Hoya wishes that he had said so earlier in his career. He probably could have gotten away from it more easily if he had faced that head on, as Garcia seems to be trying to do at this point. Or the other possibility is it's useful fodder for a press conference. It might garner a headline or two, and it doesn't really reflect anything in the way of meaningful and serious self-evaluation. That's another way that can go.
Yeah, no, he's 25, 26. And that exact what you said is exactly what he said. Like, look, what would you do at this age with that money? Like, don't you think you would do like even crazier things? And then, I got to thinking like, yeah, probably. But with this game, you got to be dedicated. You got to be, in the gym training. Bernard Hopkins always preached to keep, your body as a temple, keep it clean. The only guy that I think of that had these vices, I don't know vices, but would do these things and still perform at a high level, though it was for a short window, was Ricardo Mayorga.
For a short window, but he was a high risk, shoot the moon type fighter, and if he was a little bit off, he was way off. So yeah, when we first saw him, when he was fighting against De La Hoya, guys of that ilk, he was capable of the great night, despite the less than perfect preparation. That doesn't last very long. It really doesn't. And at the end of the day, what people from outside the sport, I think, underestimate is the degree to which this is a sport of extremely fine margins. I mean, very, very thin margins of competition. I said to you, Devin Haney beat Lomachenko. Did he? I mean, there are a lot of people look at that fight and say, "What are you talking about?" Lomachenko was right there in the 12th round. He was going at him punch for punch, et cetera, et cetera. I think Loma won the fight. That's the nature of boxing. And at the end of the day, it goes down on your record as a W. The record looks gaudy. Okay, 28-1, whatever it is. At the end of the day, some of these are totally subjective, very fine margin decisions that can be questioned by anybody with a rational mind, and They don't mean life and death differences the way sometimes the public will take them to.
No, Ryan Garcia is one of the sports rising. Well, he's already a star, but could end up being the face of boxing. But to be that, you got to win the big ones. You know, he went with Tank. Things didn't go his way. He had a lot of things put into that fight with rehydration clauses and all that. But at the end of the day, Jim, if he goes into this fight and he's not victorious, is he still one of the sport's biggest stars, or does he have to win the big one in order to have that honor?
So much of that these days is driven by social media and by the personal appeal of the athlete and his connection to the audience on social media. I no longer regard myself as an expert in evaluating a question like that because I don't do social media. I am a dinosaur. I'm an ancient, archaic type personality who still relates to the audience through conventional channels of the kinds that I grew up with and not via social media. So it's hard for me to tell you how deep and indelible is Ryan Garcia's relationship to his audience, because a lot of it is built on social media, and they want him, and they want him for visible and good reasons. He's an extremely attractive human being. He's good looking. He can speak reasonably well. He has a lot of what De La Hoya had, and De La Hoya carried the sport at a period of time when there weren't enough stars, and he did it by fighting the best fighters he could fight over and over and over, getting credit eventually from the audience for it, and therefore the audience was willing to forgive his narrow losses here and there because he was working so hard to try to entertain them. If Garcia takes the right fights, fights credible opponents, does it over and over, he'll remain a star regardless of whether he wins or loses.
Yeah. Let's see what happens, because yeah, he has this Tank fight, he has this Haney fight. There's still a lot of other big fights for Ryan. Rolly Romero.
He fought Tank Davis. Now he's fighting Devin Haney. These are good signs that he is willing to support the sport through competition.
Yeah, no, Rolly Romero's out there still for him. Teofimo Lopez, Shakur Stevenson, and that's not even mentioning a move up to 147 pounds for him, where there's other.
And by the way, they're going to pay him for every one of those, even if he doesn't win them. We're still going to pay him. So so it's worth doing if you like the gig. And most of the fighters I've known do eventually fall in love with the gig because it's so involving and so all-consuming and so intense, even if it's day-to-day in the gym.
Yeah, but then there's that question, is the juice worth the squeeze? In his point, I would think so. I would put up with it for 30, 40 million paydays,
100,000%. How are you going to argue with those numbers?
Yeah.
You're not going to get that going and taking an entry-level job as a bank cashier. You only get that from a few experiences in life, and this is one of them.
Yeah, but that brings me back to what I brought up. I think that's why some fans are thinking man, what are you doing with the drinking and the smoking? Like, your window as an athlete is so small to maximize the amount of revenue you can get. Like, you're in your prime. Like, don't do that stuff. Just try to get as much money as you can, and you can win these fights. Like, you're self-sabotaging yourself by doing this.
Well, that comes down to, is hand speed a natural gift, or is hand speed something that you built in the gym by training? And I think that, as with shooting and basketball, hand speed is a natural gift for a lot of these guys. And then, the ability to throw punches in bunches and make them almost invisible, but because of the speed with which you launch them, Oscar had that. Garcia has that. Fighters who have that have a commodity that they don't always recognize over the long haul, how important it is to keep nurturing and polishing it in the way in which they've nurtured and polished it in the gym. That's why God made trainers. Trainers are put on earth to try to make sure that people like Oscar, like Ryan Garcia, like Devin Haney, like other naturally gifted fighters will preserve and polish the gifts instead of allowing them to atrophy.
Yeah, no, I can't wait for that fight coming up April 20th in New York. On a last topic for you, Jim. Canelo, as always, the face of boxing, trending. news coming out that he's left the PBC mutually over, I don't know, not wanting fights ultimately with Benavidez, them not PBC not wanting to pay him for a Charlo fight, them saying no, we want you to fight Munguia or Benavidez and Canelo. It's a mess. But what do you make of the face of boxing not having a platform right now to go to and fight?
He's been in it a long time. He's done this since he was a boy. He has worked very hard in the gym. You have to give him credit for his perseverance, tenacity, and dedication to his own cause over a long period of time. He has bypassed certain thrills and pleasures in his life of the kind that Ryan Garcia is describing to us on behalf of being the best that he could possibly be for a long, long time. Now he gets to hear from a lot of even his own fans that, oh, just wait until you get into the ring with David Benavidez. Benavidez is a whole new thing. He's got more power than you have ever dreamed of having. He's going to wipe you out. He doesn't want to hear it. Okay, he doesn't want to be treated to that kind of disrespect from people whose respect he thinks he has very meticulously earned over a long period of time. So for whatever reason, Canelo is not contented at this time. I can't evaluate whether PBC has done a questionable job or a fantastic job for him. It's somewhere in the range of one to the other, but I'm not qualified at this moment to tell you which it was. And the bottom line is, over a long period of time, things change. I don't have the privilege of knowing whether, if HBO had stayed in place forever, I would have stayed with HBO forever without ever taking an offer from anybody else. I don't know, because I didn't have the experience. Eventually, a new buyer, AT&T, came along, bought Time Warner, made the decision for me. Boom, that's the end of HBO. I can't imagine who else I would have wanted to work for. And I don't know if Canelo has any idea under whose aegis he wants to fight if it isn't PBS. But PBC, not PBS.
Like, wow,
PBC.
they got it. The government got into fights.
but at the end of the day, something has come apart between Canelo and PBC, and we're going to see where that leads.
Yeah, it was over what was reported, Canelo's team wanting a fight with Jermall Charlo, and PBC saying, hey, okay, if we do this fight with Jermall Charlo, you have to fight David Benavidez. And it was a purely business decision. Like, they knew they were going to lose money with Jermall, and the whole world knows Canelo and David is the biggest fight you can make, which kind of perplexed a lot of fans as to why they seem, not, I don't want to say hesitant, but just they don't want to go into the fight right now. Like,
well, again, he's been in it a long time.
Yeah.
At this point, does he really have to keep proving himself over and over and over by taking the biggest fight available? Or should they pay him just to fight whoever he wants to fight because he's Canelo Alvarez? So, that it's not out of the question that debate goes on in the back of his mind. Haven't I done enough? Shouldn't I get the right to fight who I want to fight? Why are they telling me I have to fight this guy who, whatever he thinks of Benavidez, it isn't at this moment seemingly enough to make him say, I want to go straight to David Benavidez and fight the fight that everybody wants to see. Sometimes you don't want that anymore. And we'll see where all this leads. There's still going to be a sizable portion of the audience who are going to say he's Canelo Alvarez. I want to see him. I want to see him regardless of who he chooses to fight. I respect him. And there's some portion of the audience, we'll find out how many, who might be in position to now say, you know what? If he doesn't want to fight David Benavidez, to hell with him. I want to see Benavidez fight somebody else then and put him in the position in which I've been holding Canelo for the past few years.
Yeah. So what you brought up, like, I hear from fans, part of the fans say, hey, he's Canelo. He's the face of boxing. He can fight whoever he wants. It doesn't matter. He's earned that right. Look at who he's fought. First ballot Hall of Famer the moment he retires. The other part says, hey, look, he's the undisputed champion. I get it. If you weren't undisputed champion, go ahead and fight whoever. But you're the undisputed champion. you have a responsibility now, being that you're in that position as undisputed champion, to face the best, to not pick and choose. David's the mandatory. He's been the mandatory for the last 2 years. Fight him or just relinquish the belts.
Well, some fighters generate passionate, absolutely undisputed love from the audience, and some fighters don't. Lennox Lewis beat Evander Holyfield twice, annihilated Mike Tyson, was clearly the #1 heavyweight of his era, and never really got full credit from the audience for that, because there was something about Lewis's personality that made them feel he's diffident, he's not committed to me, he's not willing to go to any length to please me as a fighter. He's a businessman, he's negotiating all this, he's picking and choosing. So why should I be impressed? He's 6'6". Lennox couldn't get to that beloved station in life where his exploits might have told you that he should belong. And at the end of the day, he had to simply accept that, all right, the audience, for whatever reason, wanted Tyson to be me. The audience, for whatever reason, wanted Evander to be me. At the end of the day, I'm the one who is me. And if they don't love me, it doesn't matter. It's totally personal. It's totally idiosyncratic. It doesn't have to be explained. It just is what it is. For whatever reason, there's a portion of the audience that has not bought everything Canelo has done as enough to make him a permanent immortal at this point. I say he's a permanent immortal at this point, but I'm not a fan. I'm a businessman who comments on boxing.
Yeah, but from the looks of it, it doesn't look like we're ever really going to see that Benavidez fight, because Benavidez is moving up now to light heavyweight. He has this fight with Vosdick for the interim title. We might see him in a fight against Bivol and Beterbiev, and it's being reported that Canelo may face Munguia now, May 4th.
Well, think about this, Marcos, and I may have said it on your platform here before. Benavidez, according to the narrative that has been recited to me, was a heavyweight when he was 12 or 13 years old. And then he went about a personal process of losing 80, 85 pounds, something like that, and getting back to a weight at which he could logically train and build himself up to be a competitive athlete. But somewhere out there on the horizon remains, even though he's 168, somewhere out there on the horizon remains the possibility of David Benavidez becoming a heavyweight. As he himself said to me in a Zoom hookup like this, I had that weight at one point in my life. Now it's just a matter of putting it back on in the right way, in the logical, systematic, productive way, pound after pound. A 235-pound David Benavidez, if he could retain his level of punching power relative to the competition that he has right now, could easily become the very first overwhelmingly meaningful Mexican-American heavyweight contender. The very first overwhelmingly meaningful Mexican-American heavyweight contender, global heavyweight champion in waiting, will be the biggest economic entity in the sport at that moment, and one of the biggest economic entities ever in the arc of competitive sports. You think David Benavidez doesn't want that? You think David Benavidez doesn't go to bed at night dreaming, you know what, I could become the heavyweight champion? I'll bet you a dime to a dollar that he does. And if that's the ambition and that's the arc, there's time, there's a pathway out there. It could be absolutely fascinating to watch. Just a possibility as I see it.
That's crazy.
It is. It is. I developed 2 narrative drama projects at HBO. Did not make it to air because it takes a lot of work to get a narrative drama project on the air. But I developed 2 separate projects that were built on the dramatic fulcrum of a Mexican-American heavyweight championship contender. Because as I say, when that person comes along, that person will be arguably the biggest global monetary magnet in sports anywhere on the planet.
Yeah, that makes you kind of just feel for Andy Ruiz. Like he had it, and he let it go.
Well, and Andy Ruiz didn't have the persona that would have attracted people in the way that I'm thinking about. Benavidez is tall. Benavidez is elegant in look. Benavidez expresses himself very well. Benavidez is someone who would arrive as a heavyweight if he does as a sculpted, prototypical athlete. That's not Andy Ruiz. That's David Benavidez.
Yeah, 68, 75, 205, and then heavyweight. It's 4 weight classes
Correct.
for him.
He's
That's what.
about he's about 35, 40 pounds away. And like I said,
Wow.
he had that weight when he was 12 or 13 years old.
And then if you factor in that new weight, even though I know it hasn't gained steamed yet, it seems to be only in the WBC and I think the WBA might have adopted that new weight. But wow, 40 pounds and yeah, he's up there. It makes you think though. One of his big advantages, David, is his speed, and if he could retain that speed, he's going to give a lot of heavyweights problems. Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, the Andrade fight was the first time I saw him live. Okay. I had seen video of David Benavidez. I had not seen him live before the Andrade fight. And when he started landing power shots, third round, fourth round, when he started landing the punches he wanted to land from the distance at which he wanted to throw them, my instant thought process was, I haven't seen this kind of power in effect since early Tyson. This is the way early Tyson made opponents look when he was landing those shots that brought this look of wonder and awe into their eyes, like, oh my God, what is that? Andrade, I promise you, didn't think it was possible for somebody to hurt him the way Benavidez did.
Yeah, the only person that I can think of off the top of my head that came from those weight classes and went up to heavyweight is Roy. I don't think I would imagine that there may have been a fighter or two.
Well, and Roy cherry picked. Okay,
yeah,
I love Roy. He's a brother to me. There's nobody on the planet I love more. But if the heavyweight champion had been someone other than John Ruiz, that would have been a different journey, different path, and a different consideration. I'm not saying that Roy would not have done it. I'm saying that the opportunity was visibly ripe because Ruiz was not the kind of athlete that, say, Lennox Lewis or even Mike Tyson was.
Yeah, that brings a bigger topic that I'm glad you mentioned it, because I did want to ask you about this, because it kind of stemmed from the Canelo thing. But a lot of people are saying that it's all business now with boxing, rather than the purity of the sport, the competition of the sport, and all it is just risk management, cherry picking, as you said. Do you see it that way? And has the sport always been like this, Jim?
Well, if you go back to the days of John L. Sullivan, the first iconic American professional boxer, the mantra was, I can lick any sumbitch alive. But was he picking and choosing opponents? Of course he was picking and choosing opponents. Did he know something about them before he fought them? Of course he knew something about them before he fought them. It was the same then as it is now. There just wasn't as much money at stake or as many ways of getting at the money if you could do it. But when Sullivan fought Jake Kilrain, it was because Kilrain was the biggest money opponent out there for him, and that was the logical fight for him to take. And so that part has always been in place.
So it's a tale of all the time.
You can't complain that it's a business if you want to see a professional fight.
All right. That's good perspective there. Yeah, because I just always hear like people saying, "Oh, it's so and so's fault. This kind of stuff didn't start happening until this person fought. You never saw this back, in the golden age of boxing. Everyone fought everybody. Yada yada yada."
If a bank offers you an officer job and it's for $40,000, and you can perceive it to be a challenging and difficult job where you might have to learn some things along the way to be good enough to do it, and another bank offers you $50,000 or $60,000 for what you perceive to be an easier job, which of the two offers are you going to take? You're going to take the bigger money for the easier job. That's what boxing. That's what. Then and for the audience to complain about that is absurd. That's what life is. That you try to negotiate the best deal for yourself and then capitalize on it.
Yeah, but then the purists will say, well, what about the purity of the sport, the integrity of the sport?
I don't know of a sport that's pure. I don't know of any sport where integrity is impregnable and undisputable. They're all negotiated deals.
Oof, very true. It's all a business, Jim. We know this. It's all a business.
Even at the college level.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, look
Very
at the
true.
transfer portal.
Mm.
Okay. Do you think guys go into the transfer portal saying, I want to find some middle-level program that hasn't succeeded where I can go in and with my identity make the difference? Or do they say, I want to go to a school where I'm going to go to the Final Four and be seen by the biggest possible television audience? There's an obvious answer there. So again, this is what's called life.
Always great chatting with you, Jim. Thank you so much, man. It's always a pleasure. You will be live chatting this Joshua Ngannou fight that happens in a few days.
PPV.com. Buy the
Yes.
pay-per-view, buy PPV.com, hang in with Lamps and Ioli while they try to figure out the fight as you do.
All right, that is Jim Lampley. This is Marcos Villegas. Thank you guys for tuning in with us over here. Make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you guys for watching.